Oh,
and
we're live.
Hello! La la la. Hello, all. Welcome. It is Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And how soon before China takes over, Jen?
I don't know. I mean, if they really wanted to, they're not like us. They're not imperialist like we are. It's different. The way that they do it is very different than us. And again, there's a lot of issues there too, for sure. We've talked about that. We had a whole, God, I can't remember. We've been doing this for so long, but we did a show where we did talk about how China sort of goes into other countries, but in a different way than we do. Like we do it with military, they do it with economics. They do it with helping build infrastructure, but they have issues.
China is very astute in that the CCP understands how far they need to extend in order to get the job done. The problem in our country is that we never stop extending our arms or our legs. It doesn't matter. We'll go as far as possible. And the bigger problem here...
That's cultural, though.
It is.
China, they're much more insulated in terms of taking care of themselves and working on their own stuff.
They know to give, even though a significant portion of their population lives in poverty. You know what China has that we don't have? They have a real social safety net. They know that even the very, very bottom, they need to be taken care of. They need to have at least a minimal standard of living.
But you understand why, right?
Share with us, Jen.
Because like other nations, but even specifically East Asia, well, pretty much I think any Asians really, there's this better sense of caring for your elders, caring for older generations, the sense of a collective responsibility for each other and for your culture. And that is something that a lot of other countries have that we do not have here. And that's the thing, like there's just a greater care of the collective in places like China.
The problem, of course, that we're facing here in the United States is that a majorly significant portion of our infrastructure jobs, especially when it comes to anything that is technologically speaking, when you think about your phones, your computers, anything that can either be held in your hand or on your desk, is basically made in Southeast Asia, predominantly in China. And there are big problems with that. The biggest, of course, being that China is a communist country and they employ slave labor. And in our country, our attitude is we don't care who has to make these products. We are going to make them at the lowest cost possible for the highest profit possible because we do not have any semblance of a normal economic and political system.
I would suggest, though, what's interesting, though, is that we're talking about them using slave labor. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes.
But we use slave labor.
Sure we do.
We are a whole country of slaves. Basically, they're slaves, real slaves that are the incarcerated people that are now basically that is the new slaves. And then there's the rest of us that are just slaves to capital. And just people like, if you're just existing to live, to just try to get by, I would suggest you're in the serf class, and that is slave-like.
But this is one of the great points that Andrew Yang made regarding universal basic income. Technology is becoming artificially aware.
No one's talking about aspiring to be like China, metal.
So what we are talking about is the fact that while jobs continue to go by way of AI, we are not in any way, although I'm sure it's the same situation in China, being compensated as a people for these jobs that no longer require manual labor, even though manual labor should certainly be welcomed if it isn't necessary, but it is contributing to the benefit of society. Who's actually benefiting? And that I have no doubt, because the story we're going to talk about real quick before we bring on our panel, Jon Stewart, who is a favorite of both of ours, who has always been a truth speaker and seeker for the populist left in the United States, is now again out of a job. And why is he out of a job again, Jen?
Well, apparently he crossed the line again. Apparently he crossed that line.
Oh, he crossed that line.
He crossed that line. So I can't, here's what I just said to Peter. Like, I don't even know what the dispute is. All I need to see is that there's a problem with Jon Stewart between him and Apple. I don't even need to know the details. And I know that I side with Jon Stewart over Apple. It doesn't matter what, and I don't even know the details of this, really.
Can we just take a moment to acknowledge Ars Technica, and of course, credit to obviously a publication that I'm not familiar with, but the image that they chose to capture Jon Stewart with could not be more accurate. It's like,
with the pen.
Tell me again how I'm wrong, because I know I'm not.
Yeah, I think the gist of this looks like Jon Stewart was wanting to put out some programming and some material that involved talking about China and AI. And we can't get too many details, which is really interesting, not surprising. But Apple, given that, I mean, to me, we know that Apple's made by iSlaves and they have a lot of business. They do all their iSlaves. They do their work in China. They have a lot of obvious interests there. They have all different kinds of things. So they were not too keen on that. And apparently they also weren't liking some of the guests he was wanting to have on, which I can only assume, again, were truth tellers of some kind. So this
could it have possibly been somebody who was a journalist in China who was going to expose the type of slave-like conditions that so many of the Apple workers have to go through?
It could be. And the truth is, we can speculate. It could be innumerable things. Like, it could be many, many things. Honestly, it doesn't even matter to me.
Most of what the publications have written, specifically in Variety and the New York Times, have all written the same story.
They're censoring Jon Stewart. That's bad.
That it was creative, creative differences.
Which is another way of saying censorship.
We are telling you what to say, and if you're not going to say it, then
we've had
you're
creative
out.
Differences. Yes, we have the money, you have the creativity, and we're very different. So
the most important paragraph, which was not highlighted in any other article but Ars Technica, is this. Apple does much of its business, both in production and sales, in China, and has invested heavily in the country's infrastructure. It is well documented, and has been for many, many years, that Apple basically does everything in their capacity, not only to get their costs as low as humanly possible, but they do everything in their power not to pay any taxes either.
So this isn't so
regarding China, Apple execs may have been worried that Stewart's planned commentary could alienate customers or partners in the country. Now, what could that possibly mean?
I can't even imagine.
What
would Jon Stewart be wanting to expose? I don't know. It's a mystery.
That all of the executives get all of the money, that all of the shareholders get all of the money, that the reason why Apple has such an inflated stock value is because all of the value is going directly to the top and everyone below is basically getting nothing?
Could it
There's
be?
a reason they have to put it in another country. There's a reason.
Well, and you know that since it was originally there years ago when when Apple left this country, a ton of people lost their jobs in Colorado Springs, and there were a couple other places, and they originally moved over to China. That they have had to since move their facility from where it first was, because it was too close to like urban life and people could see how crappy the conditions were, and they were getting called out by like reporters or people that were able to find it. And then apparently they moved way further inland, so like somewhere way off the beaten path.
Here's the rub when it comes to the financial ramifications of Jon Stewart talking about this. As for AI, Apple has increasingly focused on AI for software features on the iPhone. Not a surprise. Primarily, it uses machine learning to drive things like search suggestions, photography, and palm detection. You know how sometimes you're thinking about something and then magically it appears on your iPhone or your computer? Yeah, that's what this is all about. There have also been rumors that Apple plans to get into ChatGPT, and therein lies the rub, because this is all about money and power, nothing more. And that's what we always say. You know, anytime somebody's going to speak truth to power in this country, it's painfully obvious why they don't want us to hear about it, especially from the likes of Jon Stewart, who has a very large platform.
He has a very large platform, but I would like to put out there that, John, I would love for you to come and tell me all about it on my show. I'd love to hear all about what you have to say. Very much so.
Bottom line, we are a country that is heading in the wrong direction and have been for quite some time, specifically because, as Jen likes to say, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
And they just can't help themselves.
We are definitely in the hog phase and then some. And at this point right now, if we are not going to deal direct, and this is, again, what I have often said, has always been, no matter what the corporate media tells you, no matter what the scared, out of sight, out of mind liberals will tell you, the biggest appeal of Donald Trump in this country, which has been for the past 7 years, is him saying, we're totally going to fight back against China. They're totally taking our jobs. And of course, when you say that, what you're going to get is millions of people who have lost their jobs, their careers, and their livelihoods to a government that is owned by four corporate special interests. And that's it. There's nothing more to it than that.
Serfs.
Now, that's the whole point. Now, do I think Donald Trump on the whole really gives a damn about the stiffs in this country? No, he cares enough about them to get their vote. But in terms of actually changing the economic and political infrastructure in this country that's necessary, no, I don't think he does. But then again, who right now really does? We are kind of in a...
None of those
people. We're not in a good way.
No, we're not.
And on top of everything else, we're trying to fight off World War III.
But don't forget, what's her face? Janet Yellen. Don't forget, we can afford two. We can afford two wars. I say we should up it. You know what I mean? Like, if you could afford two and you made it a BOGO, go for four. I mean, seriously, Janet.
Well, if anybody can
Damn it, Janet.
Which is exactly why our friends, it's been a while, but this is the perfect time to bring back our friends.
It makes me sad that we need to keep talking about these things, though.
No, but I think if we're going to talk to anybody about them, talk to it with people who have actually served in combat that can actually speak to exactly how detrimental war really is. But it seems that our country is just aching for one, whether it's the State Department who thinks this is the only way Biden to get reelected. It's very lucrative, especially and even for like our congresswoman, it's very lucrative. Well, our greatest general has, bared his name, is now having a media network, which is now being run by our esteemed friend, Matthew Ho. And congrats to him. What better person to be running Eisenhower Media Network? And of course,
I love Matthew.
We are pleased to welcome back two of our favorite guests who have been on our show before and certainly will be back again after tonight, because let's face it, war is a commodity and it's our biggest commodity.
It is.
Dennis Fritz and Christian Sorensen, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hello there. My hope and prayer is that you can hear me okay.
Oh, we hear you great. This is awesome. You've got it going on now.
Look out now. You remember. Yes.
I do. It's good to see you guys. Obviously, we never will have a lack of things to discuss with you, unfortunately. I say that because it's like this just is, I feel like we're really in like a hellscape. And the only reason I feel like we really get away with it is because none of it's here. You know, like I feel like if people actually had to see what was going on in places where we're dropping bombs, that it wouldn't be as easy of a sell.
Well, if you want to jump right in there.
Yeah. Anything you want to, wherever you want to pick a war, any war.
Well, let's pick the current war that we're on right now. And I will tell you, I was on the show last year, I think, with Karen, and we talked about the Iraq War. Well, I can tell you, right now, this is a continuation of that war. From my time in the office of the Secretary of Defense of Policy, there was a long-range plan to take out the entire Middle East and put in puppet governments. And I'm just telling you facts there. And the only thing that held us back was when we got stalled in Iraq because of an insurgency. But the goal was to take out Iraq, Syria, and then take out Iran within, with a youth population and then the exile community of Iran. Now, let me just share something with you, real quickly, just to lay the foundation. Then we'll let Chris jump in there, especially from the military-industrial complex, which that's his baby there. He's really very knowledgeable of that. But the first thing I want to tell you is that BB has had this in his plan all along. He's always, for years, wanting to go in to Gaza and just clean the place out and displace people. The only reason he didn't do it in years past, because we wouldn't allow him because of the pushback that you're going to get, that you're seeing right now with the, unfortunately, killings of all the innocent children. Before we came on, I was watching television and I saw 2 babies that was seriously injured, and there was an individual trying to rush them to the hospital, and he was just crying. They were not his children. I guess they were the only 2 that survived the latest bombing. With that said, they wanted to do this all along. That was the part of the Iraq War. Instead of going in it directly, at the time, the Bush administration did not want to go in and have to, to get all the pushback of all the killings that were taking place. So their goal was, guess what? To take out the supporters of Hamas and Hezbollah. And that was the goal of taking out the governments of those countries I mentioned earlier. But since that didn't work, BB has been waiting for the excuse. Now, I'm going to share something with you. As we use 9/11 to go into Iraq, because Iran, Iraq, Syria had nothing to do with 9/11, but we use that as an excuse. Well, guess what? Now we're hearing October 7th. Yeah. It is our 9/11. It is their Pearl Harbor. That was the excuse that BB was looking for. So I just wanted to lay that foundation and then give y'all a chance to ask some questions. Let Chris chime in.
Well, I'll just say real quick that most people who live in Gaza are either direct refugees or descendants of refugees who were kicked off their land in 1948 and the years leading up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the military-industrial complex is a huge part of this. Jen, you mentioned it, that we're able to tune it out because it isn't here, and that's a huge part. The wars aren't physically fought on our, in our country right here. However, it's good, and you guys mention this all the time on your show. It's good to mention that the military-industrial complex does indeed hurt the American public, and it does that in a couple of ways. One of the big ways is that tax dollars, money that could be going into programs of social uplift, healthcare, that's a big one for you, Jen, education, infrastructure, all of that goes instead to war, espionage abroad and at home, as the Snowden leaks indicated. And so that's the first thing, is tax dollars that could be helping the American public instead go to nonstop elective war. And the other one is, it's a poverty draft in a way. The poor and the working class of our country are the ones who end up fighting and dying in the wars and getting maimed physically and mentally. And so it does come back and bite us big time. So and Israel's a huge part of that, because there's an indirect transfer of money from the U.S. taxpayer that goes to Israel, $3.8 billion every year, and then Israel uses that money to purchase from the U.S. war industry. So it's an indirect transfer, and this conflict, this latest conflagration, has to be seen in that broader picture, and that's one of the reasons why Congress is so one-sided on this thing. One of the reasons.
Hey,
I would suggest AIPAC. Yeah. I would suggest AIPAC is a big part of why they're with the way they are.
Yeah. If I could make a quick comment on something
Sure.
Chris just said, and we were talking about the military-industrial complex. Think about this for a moment. I'm being conservative when I say this, but between the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, $2 trillion between the both of them, a total of $4 trillion, but it was more than that. I'm being conservative. And think about the billions of dollars that we've spent on the Ukraine-Russia war. What did we get out of the Iraq and Afghanistan war? The Taliban still in control. The Iraq is under the control of, really, quite frankly, of Iran, with the Shia population. You know, the Shia family. What did we get out of that? Well, who got something out of that? The military-industrial complex. I think they were the only winners. So think about those trillions of dollars I just mentioned, and think socially what that could have done for the United States of America.
Yeah. You mean instead of like going into Dick Cheney's wallet? Yeah, I would have appreciated that. That would have been nice for us to maybe share that a little.
You know, the fact
Halliburton and Brown and Root.
the fact that we've already had information being leaked that this everything regarding the buildup of Hamas over the past several years is directly correlated with what Bibi was doing behind the scenes. They're doing a very poor job of hiding that. And yet, despite all of that, the president of the United States has basically given carte blanche to the Israeli armed forces to do whatever the hell they want in Gaza.
Hey, listen, and Chris, forgive me. I'm not going to let you jump in there, but I tell you, I'm hot right now.
Go. Yeah.
And,
as a former Zionist, as a Jewish person, I am beside myself. So by all means, please.
Jen, and it's good to hear you say that, because I've been talking to a lot of my Jewish friends, you know, and I had dinner. I'm sure you know this guy, a guy by the name of Ben Cohen, Ben and Jerry's. Yeah, we had dinner, you know, Friday night. And I've been talking to some of my other Jewish friends, and we've been talking about this, and they feel like you do. Now, I will say this while I'm mad. So, we have to be honest tonight. You know, first of all, let me just say this. Thank goodness for shows like yours and social media, because of the fact the young generation are seeing this now. They're the ones that's going to make the change. That's why they're out in the streets and they're mad at the college campuses, because they have social media to be able to educate them on what's been going on in the past, you know, since 1948, to be quite frank with you. Now, getting back to our president, I put out a statement last Friday, I think it was, and I said, as an individual that served 28 years in our United States Air Force, I've lost total respect for our commander-in-chief. And listen, you just need to hear this. I'm being candid with this because I put it in the statement. We all now know, we've seen it right before our eyes, that our Congress and our government and our president are puppets. And I'm just being quite frank with you. And I don't care how I'm described. I'm just being honest and factual. They are puppets, and it's been seen right before our eyes. Our Congress, they can't get a doggone Speaker of the House, but the first thing they want to do is rush and get a arms package to Israel. They haven't said nothing about us.
Well, they don't really care.
And we're seeing it firsthand now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that people are seeing this. Like, it's like we're watching this in real time, that we're actually condoning a genocide. And one of the things that infuriates me, I have said it many times, that of all the Jews in Congress, and I call them out specifically because there's the loud ones that we know of. But the truth is, there's a disproportionately high number of Jews in Congress, which is not shocking, I'm sure. And yet not one of them could stand up on this issue. And I don't even mean even now. I'm talking pre-October 7th. Like, not one of those people can stand up for what's right to do, because they are so scared of basically AIPAC. And they don't know, but I've always said this about the people in there at this point. It is one of two things. Either they're being willfully ignorant, because the information is available, like you said. Most of the people that stand on the side of Israel still fail to acknowledge the Nakba. They do not acknowledge that. That does not exist for them. They come at this from a mythology and from the Bible. They are not dealing with reality. So they're either being willfully ignorant, because if you're in Congress, you have access to this information, or you're lying to us. And like, for my congresswoman, I have no doubt she's lying. She's lying. She knows what's going. She knows what an ethnic cleansing looks like. I'm sure of it. You know, so they're just lying. And they are on the wrong side of history. it is infuriating to me.
I have thoughts on that, but I want to give Chris a chance. Like I said, I don't want to take over this thing as mad as I am. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just thinking that, Dennis and I are down here in and around the nation's capital. And I was just thinking we have Bethesda, Maryland, home to Lockheed Martin, Arlington, Virginia, home to RTX, which used to be called Raytheon. Falls Church is Northrop Grumman's headquarters. Arlington's also home to Boeing. They recently moved their shop there. And General Dynamics is a little farther out in Reston, Virginia. And, you just wonder, how happy are they right now that they have, another massive, load of money coming their way. And you see it in some of the statements that some of the people in Congress and even the White House have sort of openly stated. They've said, kind of how they pitch the war in Ukraine these days. They do the same thing. They say, hey, this money's coming back in the United States. They're starting to say it, not the quiet part out loud, but they're trying to, when they're convincing their constituencies a little bit, they say, this money's coming back into the United States. And actually, on that note, there's an excellent budget guru. His name's Steven Semler, and he's at the Speaking Security Substack, and he came out. He crunched the numbers on the Biden, $106 billion budget request for these, 3 wars that we've got going on, or direct and indirect. And he showed that most of the money is indeed coming back into U.S. corporations. And so I encourage anybody listening and anybody watching to go to Steven Semler's Speaking Security Substack, because he has a graph and it's all laid out. So it is, war's a racket.
Yeah. Hey, let me just make a comment. Though we are talking about the military-industrial complex, they're going to be beneficiaries and they're going to be recipients of a lot of money. But I got to tell you, it's factions in Israel and factions in our government that's driving this particular war. Sure. And there's no doubt about it. Like I said, I saw it firsthand in the Pentagon. Sure. When the neocons were there. But what sometimes people forget is that the neocons are not just in the Republican Party. They're also, I can just take a look at Victoria Nuland. And in fact, one of our colleagues, Colleen, called her Victoria Pagan, and husband and Kagan, I should say. And but Israel, this is all about Israel. I'm just telling you like it is. I'm not going to be holding back anymore. What drives me is when we talk about our war wounded, and y'all heard me say this before, from 2008 until I eventually retired in 2022, I worked with the official sanctioned Wounded Warrior programs. I left the Pentagon as the contract program manager of their Wounded Warrior program. From 2008 to 2014, I saw firsthand the war wounded coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And I saw some of the worst wounds and injuries you can ever imagine. The other reason I am so mad is because of the fact Israel is going to do everything they can to draw us into a war with Iran. Yes. That's why all you hear about where Iran has something to do with. Well, wait a minute. First of all, what makes me mad about our country, we don't have empathy for others' interests. For example, we're in their neck of the woods. You don't think Iran, you're in their neck of the woods, they're going to have interest, they're going to support others too? What are we doing over there? We're supporting Israel. So nobody's supposed to support the counter that? And so Israel's going to do everything. I am so scared. I talked to some folks a few days ago. This has been the topic of all conversations in all think tanks now. There are some, with those carriers and others in the ships that we have out there, there are some that are really afraid of a false flag. And what I mean by that, just look at your history, the USS Liberty. The USS Liberty. For those, in your audience, just look that up. And I know some folks that are really, in theater right now, they're really worried about a false flag to do anything they can. The one that really shocked me is someone told me they wouldn't be surprised if Israel attacked Iran. And then what happens then? Let me tell you something. Iran will respond. Oh, by the way, Iran, we're not even going to talk about Hezbollah with their 100,000 rockets and missiles. Iran have ballistic missiles. not rockets, but ballistic missiles. And that's what a lot in the neocon and the Bush administration, those that were against the Iran nuclear deal, is because of the fact they wanted to limit Iran's nuclear missile program. Why? Because they don't need a nuclear weapon. They can take out, be quite frank with you, they can do a lot of damage in Israel with their ballistic missiles. So if we want to draw Iran into a war, as I put in one of my recent statements, it definitely, as some describe the Iraq war, this definitely will not be a cakewalk.
I've thought all along that was part of this. It wasn't remotely surprising to me that they've been harping on this. Well, Iran sends aid and sends help and sends weapons to us.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like this is one of those things where I say, like, the absolute caucasity of us. This is where I just lose my shit. So in other words, other countries and other people are not allowed to help them. So we are like, it's so infuriating to me. And for everyone who wants to talk about Israel's right to defend itself, this is not a war. There are not two sides. This is not a war. It's an occupation, and it's like a slave rebellion. And I just cannot get that through to people enough. This is like a slave rebellion. And yes, it's horrible things are happening, but what should they do? Again, they just want them to just sit there incarcerated in their outdoor prison for eternity.
The problem that we have right now is on multiple layers. We're going to talk about RFK later in the show, but one of the things that cannot be denied, which I think is very telling where a lot of people's mindset is, RFK was down here in Miami last week. And when questioned about his position on Israel, specifically about the Palestinians in Gaza, he actually said the words, "It is not an occupation." And so if you are going to draw that conclusion that there is no occupation, only one of two possibilities: you are completely inept and not up for the job, or you're lying on behalf of the military-industrial complex.
Willfully ignorant or lying.
There is no denying it, because the international community has made it very clear that that's what this is. And you can sell it any which way you want, and the Zionists are going to sell it. They have a lot of money and a lot of influence. AIPAC, ADL, there's a number of organizations, and they are backed by some. Just look at what happened at Harvard. You know, when Mr. Wexler, one of the wealthiest Jewish billionaires on the planet, decides that I'm going to pull my money now because you're not doing what I tell you to do, that's how this works. And that's how it's always worked. But now I feel like we're kind of crossing into a very unique moment in history where the veil is being pulled off of the Wizard of Oz. It's like people are now seeing who's behind the curtain, and they're not going to like what they see, because to them, the value of human life is only about the value of their dollar. That's it. There is no value to human life. And if killing 100,000, killing 1 million people in Gaza is going to get them what they want, they will not hesitate for a second to do it. And I think that was the whole point about Bibi, is he thought that this was his opportunity to pull this off, to get the genocide done and get it with a minimal amount of resistance. But the great news is that the resistance isn't a little, it is significantly large that the Muslim community of Dearborn, Michigan has already told Biden this is what he's getting for the 2024 election. That's pretty significant, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, look, let me share something. Let me just get to the chase, as the old saying go right now. I can tell you they are lying. Why are they lying? Because they just want that power and prestige. That's how bad they want it. They are outright lying. You know why I know they are lying? Because I used to work for Air Force Legislative Affairs, and I spent a lot of time on the Hill. And oh, by the way, guess what? Guess where those lying congressmen and women get their talking points? From the world famous AIPAC that you were talking about earlier. And that is a fact. They get their talking points. That's why they say the same thing. I stand with Israel. You know, now let me share something that we haven't talked about. And when you talk about human rights, our United States of America, we have lost all credibility when you will stand by and let no water, food, and medicines get into the Gaza. And guess what? As you already know, half of that country is 18 years and below.
Yeah. Women
and children. And we, the United States of America, the so-called leaders of human rights, will not let medicine. We should demand that. And oh, by the way, it should not be behind the scenes. Think about that for when we talk about they're lying and they're scared. oh, we're doing quiet diplomacy around and say, no, you should be out front saying demanding medicine be in there. So guess what? Why is it we can't demand it since we give you $3.5 billion a year, and now we're talking about giving you $14.5 billion a year as soon as we can get a Speaker of the House, not take care of Americans, but give Israel the first thing they want on the plate. And I'm sorry, I'm mad right now. I wish I could be as cool and calm as Christian.
No, it's good. It's that we all should be mad. We should be furious. It's also very interesting when they, when corporate media starts the clock. Palestinians jailbreak from Gaza and kill Israelis, and that's when they start the clock. Yeah. They don't start the clock in 48. They don't even start the clock at the beginning of this year. From the beginning of this year through to October 6th, the Israelis had killed over 200 people directly just in the West Bank alone. Just in the West Bank alone. None of that. I never saw that on any corporate news clip. Never. And so October 7th comes around, and that's when they start the clock. Because, like you guys have said, certain lives mean absolutely nothing to the U.S. ruling class.
And what's ironic is, so we were just talking about this. I have a cousin, and she just, if she were harmful, I'd be concerned. But and she has no idea what she's doing. And so this is how I came across this tweet, because otherwise I would never see this. So she's reposting something that came from Larry Elder, basically saying, how come Jewish lives don't matter? That man put that out. Yeah. Oh yeah, he did.
Well, look, I know I've been. Well, listen, when you said his name, how about doggone Scott out of South Carolina? I saw him on CNN, and Gabby Phillips had to say, "Whoa, wait a minute! This guy, the so-called Christian God-loving person, said we should not allow no humanitarian goods into Gaza." And Abby Phillips said, "Wait a minute, am I hearing you right? Think about that, how hypocritical we are. That's how bad they want power, and that's how bad they want that AIPAC money."
Yeah.
But I think it's going to backfire. And I think for the select few, it's not going to be a lot, but I think for the very astute and well-executed political campaigns that will transpire in the next 6 months, that will be coming after a number of these AIPAC darlings, I don't think they're going to have the same impact that they once did. They'll have a lot of money for sure. And they'll run very disgusting smear, racially charged ads like they will against, as they did against Nina Turner, as they did against Summer Lee. In some instances, and most it'll work. In some instances, and maybe more so than, maybe in years past, it's not going to work.
I think we're seeing a change. Well, look, we're definitely seeing a change in public opinion regarding Palestinians, but more so where I'm seeing it is among American Jewry. My fellow tribes people are coming around, and as somebody who attends Jewish Voice for Peace, I was amazed. There were more than 800 people on a Zoom that they had to turn it into a webinar. And what was so happy for me, I was so happy to see that so many of the people were my parents' age. So it wasn't just young people. There are older people that are starting to recognize this. You're never going to see it on CNN or MSNBC or Fox.
The problem that we have, and this is a significant problem, like you said, Dennis, obviously, and much gratitude and appreciation for what you say about our show. It means a lot. We may not have the biggest audience in the world.
We're small but mighty.
But I think we put out some pretty solid content. And we put out a clip that was about a minute long of Jen basically explaining what it's like to grow up a Zionist in the United States or in Israel. And in that 1 minute of time, it basically lays the foundation of how AIPAC and the like have been able to get away with what they've been able to get away with for a very long time.
We were brainwashed. In seriousness. We were so brainwashed. I can't even, and it's so upsetting because we weren't even brainwashed about something that happened eons ago. We were brainwashed about something where there are still primary sources that are alive.
Yeah. We ended up doing very well on Instagram, but on TikTok, it ended up going viral. And by going viral, I caught it pretty quick because they actually flagged it. They actually pulled it and said that it was harmful content. Now, of course, I was able to repeal it, and You have to
appeal it.
You have appeal. Yes, I appealed it, and you obviously have to respond in a certain way. But thankfully, they didn't have a leg to stand on. There was no harmful content. Of course, it was just
it's just the truth.
Yeah, the truth. The truth hurts, apparently, to the powers that be. But thankfully, over 200,000 people have seen it, and over 33,000 people have liked it, and over 1,500 people have commented on it. And so what that tells me is that there are a lot of good people that are out there. They do believe that we can turn a corner, and the ones that have been able to get away with this for so long will only be able to get away with it for so long. You know, our motivation on this channel, and maybe that's the advantage that we have over others, is that we don't do this to make a living.
No.
There's a lot of other people who make, content, political content online.
And that's good, because we got demonetized a while back for something.
We did. For something we don't even know. They couldn't explain to us exactly what it was. But the good news is that we can tell the truth, because a lot of others won't tell the truth, because for them, their livelihood depends on it. So if they know that they're going to cross into an area that is going to get them demonetized, where they're making thousands upon thousands of dollars a month in income, they're going to think twice about what they're going to say. Whereas with us, it's like, to hell with it. You might as well just say the truth, because the truth is what matters. Even, the truth will set you free.
It is very freeing.
Yeah. Hey, let me make a comment on that. Jen, thank you for sharing that, because I had heard that. Oh, by the way, I saw it on TikTok too. I'm not a social media guy, but I love TikTok. I'm a fanatic. Okay. In fact, before I get to my point, let me just mention this too. And this is a fact. The reason our government wanted to take TikTok down, because they didn't want us to get the real-time information, or you to be able to post like that, because we're getting real-time information. And that is why the tide is changing as well. But going back to what you said, Jen, I had a good Jewish friend of mine to tell me over the weekend that, as you just stated, I was shocked when he told me that we are brainwashed as youngsters. And we're brainwashed to say, hey, there was nobody on that land. We went in there, and we made it what it is today. They didn't take it from nobody. I was shocked when what he was telling me. And he said he did not realize it until he got older. Now, the other thing I will tell you with him and you, here's why the young generation is going to change. Now, this is going to be a major shift because of the fact, as I mentioned before, thank goodness for social media. Because as you know, and that's why you all exist, is because of the fact the media is not going to tell the truth. Listen, they were so one-sided early on when they took off the 3 Muslim guys on MSNBC. Social media is what got them back on. They blew their doggone station up with social media tags, and that's what got them back on. Now the other thing, I have a good friend that was invited to New York, and he spent the weekend with a conference with Jewish rabbis in New York, and Jen, they gave the same speech that you gave to. They're mad at Bibi. They're so mad at him right now in the far right. But now, here's the other thing you must be mindful of. It's moving so fast, as I tell folks right now, and what our dumb Congress don't realize is that with the immigration that we've had coming from that area of the world, we have so many Muslims over here right now, Palestinians over here right now, and they're seeing the one-sided personally up front right now. And now, with that said, and with social media, and y'all seen all the demonstrations worldwide, Christensen, in fact, participated in the one. I knew that, did you, Christensen? That we had one in Washington, D.C. And, oh, by the way, the Jewish Community for Peace, they took over the Capitol, in support, of peace. Now, the last thing I'll say, here's some not so good news.
They got arrested. They got arrested.
200 something, I think, got arrested. Yeah. Now, here's the bad news, and the concern that came out of some of those Jewish rabbis, and I've heard that also. They say the tide is moving so fast that they're concerned that anti-Semitic, views could really go on the rise, and they're scared that it could turn so fast, And what I told them, first of all, we got to get the truth out, but one of you said first, it's about people. I don't care if you're black, white, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, or whatever. It's about good people. And I said, if that tide starts changing that direction, that's where I come into place. That's where others come into place to say, oh, no, this is not about people as a whole of a Jewish community. This is about far-right, right-wing Zionists that don't care about others. And so that's when I come in and defend the community. We're all in this together. We want humanity. We want good for everybody. And that's why we're fighting hard right now. So I will be out there, I will not allow that turn, to make that dramatic turn like that. But they're really afraid of that because of the fact of what's going on, right now.
Yeah, they should be. They should be. And actually, one of the rabbis that was in the center was Rabbi Brant Rosen, who's been a guest on our show a couple of times. And he has always been, in the forefront of this. But it's extremely important for us to distinguish the difference between Judaism and Zionism. But what happens is you have groups like AIPAC and ADL that are purposefully conflating them, purposefully doing that so that they could play the anti-Semitic card, so that they could get away with doing whatever they want as white supremacist colonizers by playing the anti-Semitic card. But what they're doing is, by constantly conflating them, is they're increasing the global anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
Because we're being linked with what is going on in Israel. And that's why it's so many of you see what that says is not in our name. That's not in my name. Don't be doing that in my name. And that's one of the key things. And, we have to constantly be fighting this narrative. But yeah, and it's unfortunate. And I live amongst people that are normally otherwise educated, but as Mark Lamont Hill says, except for Palestine.
Right. Jonathan of the ADL, the CEO, he's the one that caused the 3 Muslim folks on MSNBC to go off because he came on. Yeah. I hate to tell you this. I put him in the same category as BB. I am no fan of his whatsoever because I call him a used car salesman.
Well, the truth is that they're really not that different from white nationalists. They're pretty much the same kind of thing. I mean, look, and I say this over and over again, the only way you can have an ethno-state is to commit an ethno-cleanse. They go hand in hand. You cannot have an ethno-state without an ethno-cleanse. So now what we're talking about are people that are okay committing ethnic cleansing. So that's pretty supremacist. I mean, it's pretty white supremacist. I mean, they're Ashkenazi Jews. So yeah, it's a white settler colonial system.
They've done a great job of hiding it, but you can't hide it now. It's just
you can't hide it now.
It's too obvious. And yet the president of the United States is forging ahead with it, arm in arm with Bibi. And we've seen this political transformation because there has been a labor uprising in this country over the past several years. It particularly started with Bernie back in the summer of 2015, and it's accelerated to really interesting heights over the course of that time. Trump obviously saw that and decided to hitch a ride on that because he knew it could help him win, especially in the upper Midwest. But right now, I think we've seen a really significant transformation in the political electorate of the 2 major parties. The Democratic Party decided that we are not going to go the way of Bernie Sanders under any circumstances. So you know what we're going to do? We are going to grab as many neocon suburban Republicans as we possibly can and shove them into our party. And how do I know that this is true? Because 3 of the biggest spokespeople for the Democratic Party today is the 3-headed monster of the W. Bush administration, David Frum, Jennifer Rubin, and Bill Kristol. And they are proud to be Democrats. As a matter of fact, Bill Kristol put out a tweet last week talking about how he came to Washington in the early 80s and how engulfed he became with the whole Reagan doctrine, if you will, and how no president has embodied it better than President Biden. And I'm thinking, if this isn't the sign that you need to get the frick away from this administration and this president, I don't know what is. If Bill Kristol is endorsing your presidency, move the fuck away.
It's like they just can't.
Well, the problem is, and it's part of the master plan, is that the neocons is going to go wherever they can get their plan executed. As you know, they started out as Democrats and then they switched over to Reagan year because of the neocons. They were after the USSR. It's about total control of the world. Be quite frank with you. That's why we're in the Ukraine-Russia war right now, because of the fact Russia was warning us many years. I think I was on during the time when we released our New York Times paid ad, about America should be a force for peace. And we explained how we got into the Ukraine, Russia war. But the neocons, they're going to run, to wherever they think they can get their strategy implemented and executed.
I have a question. Maybe Chris, you're the person to answer this. We were talking before about like, are they going to go in Gaza? Are they going to go? And I don't think so, because I think that at the end of the day, that'll be too bloody of a body count. They're too cowardly. It's easier just to drop bombs as opposed to actually send people in. But one of the things that we continually notice with Israel is complete violation of all international law. Like no rules don't apply there. The rules just don't apply. And one of the things that we're seeing is we keep hearing, oh, they're using white phosphorus. They're, can you explain that? Like why? Because I'm assuming if people in the general war community are saying, yeah, even this is a bridge too far. And yet Israel's like, no, hold my beer. We're going. It's like, can you like explain to me like the kind of nonsense that we're talking about that they're just getting away with blatantly?
Well, I think you guys touched upon this. I think it's the U.S. ruling class is allied to the Israeli ruling class, and Israel works very, very hard, openly and through really diligent espionage tactics to make sure that Europe, at least Western Europe, is also a serious backer. So I think the way that the Knesset is looking at this thing is, hey, we have the green light. We have the green light from Washington, London, Paris, Berlin. So let's go as hard as possible. And yeah, speaking of the weapons of war that they're using, at least from the U.S. arsenal is really across the board. So for helicopters, you have Textron Cobra, which is an attack helicopter. You have the Boeing quote unquote Apache helicopter, which is also an attack helicopter. You have Lockheed Martin Sikorsky, which is made in Connecticut. That's more of a cargo helicopter. So you got the air covered. Then they have for fighter jets, Lockheed Martin F-35, Lockheed Martin F-16 as well. There's the Boeing F-15. I mean, it's all U.S. support. So I mention this because Israel also knows that it has the full backing of U.S. industry. I mean, this is big business. And not to mention stuff that goes boom. One of the things that Israel's firing off is the Lockheed Martin Hellfire, which is down in your neck of the woods, made in Orlando. So it's all over the place.
Go Florida. Yeah.
So I think it's just a very calculated decision on the Israeli part. They have worked really hard to make sure that the West backs them, and that's that.
But they're using stuff that's not allowed. Like
Sure.
So so what we're saying is we're not allowed to use those, but we'll let them use those. But this ultimately all comes down to the fact that for the most part, they truly believe they're better than Palestinians and that their lives are worth more. They do. Cool. And I forget who was that Egyptian comic that was on with Piers Morgan. I only saw a clip because I don't watch Piers Morgan. But he was amazing. And he was basically like, so I just want to know, what's the exchange rate? How many Palestinian lives for each Israeli? Like, what's the exchange rate? Is it 1 to 100? Like, what is it?
Maybe we can measure it in dollars, because apparently
everything can be measured in dollars.
The Palestinians are going to get 100 million, amazingly, in humanitarian aid. How much is Israel getting? 10 billion. So there you go. That's about it. About a measure.
But you're giving them humanitarian aid. It would have been better if you just didn't bomb their hospitals.
Well, that's true too. So I would say if you're going to base it on finances, it looks like for every one Israeli that dies, 100 Palestinians must die. And so that's probably about right. I'd say it's something in that range.
And to be honest, and I've said this before, we are taught that they are lesser. We were taught that they are lesser.
Yeah, they're going to kill at least 100,000 Palestinians. No question about it.
I don't understand how this doesn't end with 1 million dead people. You cut off water, you bomb the hospitals, you have no medical supplies, disease will set in.
The disease is going to be the long-term.
Well, I just don't see how I don't see how you can fix this at this point with the amount of damage they just did within the past week.
Well, that goes back to, how do we allow them to use illegal, weapons and so forth? If you can allow humanitarian aid to not enter Gaza, where you're killing kids and the ramifications that y'all just mentioned, they feel that, the green light, if you will. But let me share something with you. You said about why haven't they gone in yet? I can give you facts, and then I can give you, my thoughts. And none of us really know. But I will tell you, I do think they are really thinking about Hezbollah. Now, I mentioned Iran a few minutes ago, but Hezbollah, you look at Hamas, I call them a rogue, really terrorist group. But Hezbollah really has a well-trained military with a lot of equipment, and they can do damage as well. And so I really feel that Hezbollah is not bluffing when they say they would be forced to go in. Now, let me just mention one little thing to you. When I say the people I've been talking to, and I've been studying this, when I was in the Pentagon, all I did was study this history and study all the plans that we had in the past and how we got to here. I am really afraid that if they do go in, it's going to explode. There's no doubt in my mind, because Hezbollah will come in, and the pressure is too much right now when we talk about the worldwide international demonstrations. And it's being right before all our eyes with social media, they will have no choice but to go in. Jordan, the king, he will have no choice, because half of their population, guess what, have ties to the Palestinians. Because refugees, that's how they got there. And when people talk about Egypt and Jordan not opening their borders, they're not going to do it because they know what Israel's doing. Displacement, to take over. They'll never get back home.
And they can't necessarily absorb all those people. And, even the people that are living in refugee camps in places like Syria or Lebanon and Jordan, those people have no country. I don't think people understand that. Like, they don't have a passport. They don't have a country. They don't get to be citizens where they're living. They get to be just wandering aimlessly. Some people are like, it's not like they can just, assimilate into that new country and just become citizens and just go about their lives. I don't think, that's not how that works.
Mm-hmm.
In Lebanon in particular, Palestinians have a very difficult time just getting work permits. I mean, the bureaucracy is working against them, and
What do you, as we wind down the conversation, what do you guys see as being the political consequences for those that have been full-throated behind this genocide? Because that's what this is. And I'm wondering how you kind of foresee, I mean, I don't think there was any chance with recent events that, Biden could get reelected, not the least of which is his complete cognitive decline, his, just inability to really handle the job. The fact that the first person who went to meet with Bibi after this happened was who I call President Blinken, because I do believe that Antony Blinken is the real president of the United States. It is certainly not Joe, and it is
he can't even keep his friggin' eyes open and have a conversation.
And it's definitely not Kamala. So,
and thankfully, and I'll say thankfully on that.
And so we're in a position right now where I'm kind of wondering how you guys foresee, sort of the realignment, if you will, of the political map in 2024, because it is good. This is going to be a landmark electoral year, I think, in a lot of ways. Things we may not have seen before, or certainly haven't seen in a very long time.
I worry that that the situation. So the American public is hurting. And I think many people are completely turned off from the two-party system, and I think that many are absolutely just going to refrain. If the two parties keep offering hurt and pain to the American public, the American public is going to continue to sit it out, and a good chunk of the American public is going to fight red team, blue team. But the American public is hurting, and it's only going to get worse, and the American public will eventually rise up. But I believe it's going to be too late. Dennis?
Yeah. I wrote down, as you were talking, third party. As I talk to folks and watch social media, Biden right now is losing a lot of voters. And you ready for this? To include me. And I told some friends that, and they said, well, who are you going to vote for? That leaves Trump. Well, I hope Trump is in jail, but those that are following him, they're still ironclad supporters, no wavering, and you just can't have anything like that. No wavering, of the state. They can do anything they want to. So we're going to have to challenge whoever that third party is. We're going to have to challenge them and say, okay, were you one of the ones that were out there having that unwavering, allowing genocide to happen, allowing oppression to happen? We got to ask that question. Were you the one that was supporting not letting humanitarian aid? We need to ask that question and hold them accountable. And I think there's a possibility it's going to happen, because I'm telling you, I've been following this for decades, and this is the most optimistic I ever felt about the American people and the young folks, because of the fact, listen, I'm an old guy, but I got to say it again. Thank goodness for social media, because I can tell you right now, this would not be happening if it wasn't for social media. There's no doubt in my mind, because the things that I know now, many people didn't know. I'm just so happy. Many people didn't know. I got people calling me, my daughter calling me, asking questions. The other thing, when you were talking about the older generation, they didn't ask questions. They just did what like you said, you were brainwashed.
Yeah.
The new generation now, they are critical thinkers. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. We just did what we were told.
Well, we didn't have access to we didn't have access to the information. I didn't know.
Exactly.
We didn't know. So, now that you can know and people still choose not to know, it's a whole different ballgame to me. I have my own atonement to do. I was used as a tool in ethnic cleansing when I was in Israel, and I did not know, and I was part of something, in planting trees and all this ridiculous.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And so, it's my own sort of, I have to reconcile that, but I really didn't know. And it wasn't readily available. And thankfully, I have come to realize that a lot of the information was classified and then has been released in Elon Poppy's book, which came out in 2006. So apparently, like around that time was when stuff was available to know. So I couldn't have known anyway, but still, it's not good. It's
hey, Jen, before we go, let me just say something about you. Listen, I am so proud of you, and it takes guts and courage to do that, and that's what it takes, And let me just tell you something. Like I said, it's about people, good people, and I will do anything I could to protect you. I will be there for you, okay? Because that's what it's about, and I'm so proud of you. And so you just know you got a friend in Dennis Fritz that'll be there backing you and supporting you, okay?
Thank you so much. That means a lot, because the truth is that as much as the Jews like to call other people anti-Semitic, they're not too fond of self-loathing Jews.
Yeah, I don't want to say self-hating Jews. Yeah, I was going to mention that to you. You know. I'm sure you're probably been, but I decided not to say that. But
no, I get it. I get it. But
well, apparently
this is apparently the hill I'm going to die on.
Well, apparently the greatest Jew who ever lived, his lesson still does not seem to be taken by the average person in this world, which is do unto others as you would have done to you. You would think that
super Jew.
Yeah, you would think that the golden rule would be the rule to end all rules in these circumstances. But of course, it's the last one that appears.
But Jesus wasn't a capitalist.
Jesus was a Jew.
Well, he was a Jew, but he wasn't a capitalist. He was a carpenter. But that's neither here nor there. But
he was a carpenter socialist. But
that's the problem is capitalism.
But the point is that most of what people will espouse is always hypocritical if it serves their ends.
Yeah.
That's what.
When you know better, you need to do better, people.
As the namesake of the organization that you guys are a part of, the military-industrial complex is what bore out of us becoming the most powerful nation on earth in a war that we still like to pretend we won by ourselves, even though we did win the Pacific, but we did not defeat Nazi Germany. The Russians did.
No, and now we're supporting them again against the Russians.
Yes.
So, we can get into that another time. Like that's a whole other, please.
80 years ago, with limited amount of technology in terms of what could reach the masses, they always said that you got your information from Walter Cronkite. Today, you can get your information from a lot of different places that do not involve corporate media infrastructure. And that is the positive that we see now more than ever. And I think the fact that there is this sort of uniting front amongst the working class of this country is very reassuring in a lot of ways. And I think what you guys are doing is equally important. It is equally important that people in the military, whether conservative or liberal, any line that you fall under when it comes to our politics, is very important that we talk about this. I've always said that the only opinion that ever matters when it comes to war are those who are willing to put on the uniform and die for this country. Anybody else's opinion doesn't mean shit. Why? Because they're all cowards like Bill Kristol.
You had to get that out.
I had to get that out there. Sorry, just had to get that out there. Dennis, Christian,
thank you guys so much.
Thank you for what you do. keep fighting the good fight.
I mean, I wish I could say we don't need to see you so often, but apparently this is going to be like a regular thing. It's not ending.
Longer than we think. But
we'll be ready. Give us a call and we're ready. Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Always a pleasure, and obviously the conversation is always.
Oh, for the love of all that is holy metalopoly, nobody sits around hating on everybody like you think. Well, yes, all the Jews and the Muslims are all getting together and hating on Christians.
You know, sometimes people.
First of all, I say Gentile.
Well, sometimes people like to be shit posters. You know that.
Yeah, cut that out, man.
And speaking of a third-party potential run, which is something that a lot of people think is going to have a profound effect on next year's election.
I think it does. I don't know how exactly, but it will definitely. It's going to have an effect on the election.
Well, apparently. We thought first, I mean, listen, we also have to remember that in our country, we are stuck in a very unfortunate quagmire, which is our election season never ends. One ends and the next one starts
because
all
it
over
is
again.
So profitable. So we talk about the military-industrial complex, but we also have to talk about what I call the WCCC, which are white-collar campaign carnies. And it's sort of that whole election partisan consulting class. And it's also very profitable. So the longer that you can have election season go, the more people get to ride that carny payroll. That's the whole point of it.
RFK's position on Israel is as bad as anybody's. As bad as anybody's. And the fact that he is in denial of the occupation. And again, talk about a guy who definitely knows the score, despite what he's telling you, because he knows, and he has said as much on Joe Rogan, that the CIA murdered his father and his uncle. Now, if he knows that, then he definitely knows that Israel is an occupied territory.
Well, I mean, he needs to get his head out of Rabbi Shmuley's tuchus.
He seems to think that that vote is so significant that it's actually going to help him win the election.
I know, but it's really hurting him. And you know how I know that it's really going to hurt him? Is because I look at people like Kim Iverson, who I do respect very much. And you guys know I really appreciate Kim. And she was very much a supporter and was very, interested in him. And I don't know where she stands now on it. I don't know. I haven't spoken with her about it, but I can tell the way she's been covering it is his stance on Israel is absolutely affecting her. And so if she is a typical, type of supporter, she tends to be libertarian. She tends to be, on certain issues. And if that's really turning her off, I have to imagine she's not alone. And so a lot of the people that were supporting him, this is not a good look.
He somehow, in my estimation, thinks that this is going to win him a lion's share of the Jewish vote. Well, he's in for a very rude awakening.
Not happening.
And I still think that a lot of that Jewish vote, knee-jerk, will ultimately go to Donald Trump.
Well, this is the thing. The Jews.
What did Donald Trump do?
What did Donald Trump do? Well, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, but of course, notice how nobody's, challenged that since. But I think that if what he's going for, if what RFK is going for, the Jews that he's going to pull are Trump Jews.
I agree with that.
He's not going to pull any Jews from the Democratic Party on this. So, I mean, I'm just saying, if that's his audience, but people like Rabbi Shmuley are Republicans. The Jews that always vote Israel first, most of those people are Republicans.
Even if they're registered independents, their knee jerk is to vote Republican.
Yes, it's just the way it is, and we see it as a microcosm in South Florida. But and again, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, Jews that tend to prioritize Israel for their voting purposes tend to vote Republican.
Now,
so yeah.
On the flip side of the coin, apparently RFK has made a determination that we are going to be able to get a swing in the other direction when it comes to the black vote in the Democratic Party. Now, I'm not going to tell you why. I'm going to play the clip. You'll see exactly why.
And so what I focus on are things that I believe I can change to make things better. And the two things that need to be changed is our education system, which is crippling a generation. It's a crime against a generation of black children. And we've got to fix that system. And everybody can get behind that, and politically it is doable. The other thing that we can do is to build opportunity for black neighborhoods to actually build businesses. And I know how to do that, and you can do it through empowerment zones, through tax credits, through loans, through direct grants, through education, because there's no accrued business knowledge in those, and there's no accrued income or inheritance money. And that has to be made available. So I believe, yes, we can do that grants. But if you're saying we're going to call it, we have to call it reparations, and it has to come in this form, I'm just saying to you, as a practical person I'm not a politician, but I've been around politics my whole life, and I know what's feasible and what's not. And I know that when a politician wants to pretend they're doing something, when they really don't have any intention to do it, they name a commission. I don't need a commission to know how to fix this. I don't need it because I've been doing it my whole life.
So basically what you're saying is this country, you don't think this country will ever pass legislation for cash reparations on a national level, but you're focused on the things you can actually do and get done for Black people.
Exactly.
So I agree with him on that we don't need a commission because we don't. We already know how to fix it. But
Bobby, you're a politician.
You're a politician. You were born a politician. Just accept it, move on.
Yeah.
But that aside, to say that, okay, that is not reparations. What he's talking about is also needed things, investment in Black communities and vulnerable communities and places that don't have like healthy foods, and all of that is important, but that's not reparations. That's not reparations. I'm sort of like remiss to call him Bobby. I feel like that's too familiar. Almost it's like Mr. Kennedy. But like, that's not reparations. Reparations is paying the descendants of slaves what they're owed. It's that simple. And we, as the owers, do not get to dictate the terms of what is owed. See, that's the thing. That's not how this works. When someone owes you money, they don't then get to decide how much money they actually owe you. No. So that's reparations. Investment in infrastructure, investment in Black communities and schools and all that stuff. Way good. All with you. That's not reparations.
Yeah. The problem, of course, is when somebody says we need to move on, that we need to move on. Well, here's what I would tell you. It's very easy to move on, but you don't actually have an economic infrastructure in place to bring things up to a balanced level where generational wealth can actually be built. When you think about who can build generational wealth in the Black community, it's not to say that you don't live in a country today where everyone, for the most part, has that opportunity. But never forget, we have a completely decimated education system in the United States, and it's done on purpose. Everything is for profit.
We like to keep ourselves stupid.
If you don't have universal education, if you don't have universal health care.
Well, and that's an important factor.
And if you don't have a living wage, you're going to have these problems. I always say, if you want to point to the perfect country in the world, just look at Australia. They have universal education, universal health care, and a living wage.
They have their own issues and they treat their indigenous like shit too.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
They're white colonizers. So, but I don't see how he can be standing there and talking about infrastructure and helping raise up a Black community, but you don't support healthcare.
My point is that in Australia, their poverty rate is under 5%. In this country, it's over 20%. It's probably a lot higher than even what the statistics will bear out.
Oh.
So if we were to look at it as, well, where do you stand on the poverty level?
It's way higher than that.
Yeah.
What's 20%? What are they counting as poverty? Because are people living in their cars that work full time and make decent money? Is that poverty? Because I call that poverty.
Well, we saw that happening up in Seattle now.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't know what they're calling poverty, but if you've got 3/4 of our people can't afford a $400 emergency, then I don't see how you're saying we only have a 20% poverty rate. I don't see that. That doesn't make sense to me.
We like you, but for the love of God, you do not understand what communism means.
You really
if
don't.
You think that's what
not
it is.
a communist.
It's not communist. That's authoritarianism. There is a difference.
And Australia is not authoritarian or communist. You're being silly.
You don't like the way that they handled COVID?
You're just being silly.
Look, most countries did not handle COVID well. Why? Because we have authoritarian governments. Our government takes full advantage of us because we're not healthy. They didn't tell the truth about the virus.
And we're in big pharma.
Of course. And this is all about the for-profit system. End of discussion.
Which is what makes us inherently worse than a lot of these other countries in the COVID response. Because even though you might not have liked the COVID response in certain places, in our country, we have to constantly be under the assumption that it's profit motive based. Everything is profit motive based. Whereas in other countries that don't have for-profit healthcare, it's not necessarily that. Now they're still being, under the thumb of the same pharmaceutical companies, but those governments at least have a tendency to protect their people from being raped by those companies. So, there's a better situation, but in our country, everything is a profit motive. So, you wonder why people don't trust things like vaccines. It's because we know that everything here is a profit motive. Maybe if we took away the profit motive, people wouldn't be as mistrusting.
And I would agree with you, Ray. I did make a mistake. It's not authoritarianism. It's totalitarianism. I would agree with that. But they're both wrong. It's like when somebody says that socialism is just a stone's throw away from communism. Well, guess what? Capitalism is a stone's throw away from fascism. That's just how it is.
It's capitalism run by neoliberalism equals fascism.
Correct.
And that's where we are. But the thing is, I don't think it's like, it doesn't happen overnight. But I got to tell you, if you start looking at some of the signs, like I forget if there's like 12, I forget. Somebody tell me how many of the different points of fascism, like there's like a checklist. But we're in a bad place. You've got corporate control of 3 branches of government, corporate control of our source of information, of the media. You have a complete alignment between the military industrial complex, the deep state, and the government. That's a pretty dark situation. It's pretty scary.
Regardless of where anybody stands on the issue of reparations, something simple as 40 acres and a mule, which to even comprehend what 40 acres would be worth today.
It has been done and the numbers exist. I don't know it off the top of my head. We do know the number. Pay the people what they're owed.
And so if we're living in a country today where we know we have significant problems, and let's be honest, the odds of getting reparations in this country is slim to none. But that doesn't mean that the infrastructure in this country can't change significantly, and it will benefit very specific people in a more profound way than even other communities where it is needed.
If we can do it without privatizing and profitizing it.
Well, of course.
And that's really what it comes down to, because in the past, I feel like so many efforts to go into like disadvantaged communities and help build them up, but it just ends up lining pockets of certain NGOs and politicians, and nobody actually gets anything.
And this is where
this is the problem.
And this is where the shrinking of the government is necessary, because we do have a bureaucracy that is designed to ensure that we don't get anything. It's not coincidental. And for those of you who have followed our show, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, we said from day one that when he said that he was going to hire 80,000 IRS agents, who in the flying F do you think they were going after? They are definitely not going after the people who live on Palm Beach Island. I can assure you of that. That is the bureaucracy that grows and grows and grows and goes after people in the most vulnerable areas that are just trying to get ahead. The goal in this country is austerity. It's to make you believe that if you stop being a wage slave, that you're just going to be a slave and you're going to die. But we have to change that mindset in this country. I appreciate the fact that RFK is even putting that word out there, because that's more than just about anybody else is willing to say. Just as we've pointed out the fact that RFK is willing to say from the major corporations that basically run the world, which is BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. He is the only person saying that. And so credit where credit is due, but refining and toning is absolutely necessary. And the same is true for Israel, and the same is true for healthcare. He has to come around.
Metal. Okay, you've watched our show long enough. You know that our tax dollars don't pay for that kind of stuff. You know that that's not true. You know better. Okay, you've been watching us way too long. All right, I'm going to put you in timeout in a second.
We do like to see it, Brian. Our show has actually been doing pretty well on our numbers tonight, and we didn't even have any guests with major platforms. But that's actually going to change on Thursday, isn't it, Jen?
It is going to change. But I just, guys, on the last thing I'm going to say about reparations, and I've always been extremely clear on my position on this. I personally believe, like in a karmic sense, okay, and this is just me. This is my vibe. This is what I believe, that we are never going to excel, succeed, be in any way a thriving civilization until we deal with this. That's just my belief. I believe that. And I also believe that when you owe something, you pay something, because my mama taught me better. So to me, it's very, very simple. And I see that you're saying you're an American descendant of slaves. You don't want reparations. You know what? You can forego yours. That's fine. That's your prerogative. Sure. To me, what you are owed, you are owed. It is not up to that. And it's not your tax dollars, for the love of all that is holy, people. That's not how this works. We just had Steve on the other day. Go back and rewatch the MMT videos, please. I assure you, it's not coming from your tax dollars.
You have to. I can't do Yoda, but if I could, you have to unlearn what you have learned.
Yes. So it's not your tax dollars, or not paying for reparations. And by the way, even if they were, guess what? Black people's tax dollars would be going into that pot too. And if you, honestly, I need to create like a reference list.
That's a great point, Notary. Well, as it turns out, we are attempting to have old friend of the show, Greg Pallas, come back on to talk about a story that he has actually been covering for 3 decades. The new movie, Killers of the Flower Moon. I do plan to see it. It's 3.5 hours, which
I don't know that I can make
how anyone could sit through a movie theater for that. That's actually 4 hours.
Well, I mean, I remember seeing like Schindler's List in the theater, or Saving Private Ryan. I mean,
totally
it's happened.
Different now. Like if you go to the movies, you've got like a half hour of like ramp up before the movie actually.
Yes, I want to see that, but it's about the Osage Indians.
Yes.
And
Lily Gladstone, who is a Native American, is getting completely lost. She's got like Best Actress, stuff going.
Well, Hollywood loves tokens too.
Of course they do, but if it's worthy, then it's.
Well, in some cases, natives, certain tribes, have been compensated in certain ways. Nowhere near enough, obviously. Look, I'm like the bleeding heart here. So for me, it's like
bleeding heart.
It's all of it's just horrible how we treat everybody, with the exception of the Seminoles. And when I say Seminoles, I specifically mean Florida Seminoles. Shout out to Oklahoma Seminoles. I'm sorry that you are treated as second-class citizens. But other than the Florida Seminoles, the native tribes, they got the shitty end of every deal and just please. And if a whole group of native people got together and said, look, we're owed this and this and this and this, I'd say, cut them a fucking check. So you're not going to what about me with anything, because the truth is, I think we should be inviting people in from the border and putting them up in like dorms and accommodations and helping them get on their feet and offering them food. I mean, I'm not saying we should be giving them like foot rubs and shit. But this is not okay with me how to treat people. So you can what about all the different groups of people? And my answer is going to say, if people are owed, pay them what they're owed and move on. And just treat people nice. Why is that so frigging difficult?
Because everybody recognizes that the system is a failure and only a select few are actually able to get ahead in it, and everyone else is basically grasping at straws. That's all.
Well, I honestly, you're not going to what about me, because I cannot think of a case wherein I would say, no, that group don't treat fairly, don't pay them what they're owed. So no, I'm going to say that for everybody. I think, and again, Florida Seminoles are the exception when we're talking about the indigenous people. And if you don't know better, they own every single hard rock in the world, with the exception of the one in Las Vegas. And they take very good care of their tribe. But unless you're an Oklahoma Seminole, then you don't get dick.
That's a whole other story.
That's a whole other story.
F those Oklahomans anyway.
No, that's not
What do we
good.
have coming up on Thursday?
So guys, Thursday, we will yet again be talking more about what is going on. It is not going away from me. Like, I can't get this out of my head. And my husband's losing his mind, because everything I'm listening to and everything I'm reading and everything is about this. So we will be having on some great guests. We are going to be having on somebody who I've not met in person, who I really like his show. His name is Mark Steiner, and he has a radio show, and he's also on Real Progressives. So that right, that's where he's on with the Real
News.
Is he the Real News? He's the Real News. Sorry.
I knew it was Max Alvarez.
Oh, right. Through Max. I was thinking that
Real Progressives is.
Yeah, I'm thinking about. So Mark Steiner has a show called Not in Our Name that he's had for quite a while. That is like my Deconstructing Zionism series, and so I've wanted to kind of cross pollinate with him. And then we're also going to be joined by Lee Camp and Katie Halper. So we're going to be having like a little tribe fest. A little self-loathing tribal fest is what I'll call it. And we're going to, we're trying to like cross-pollinate as much as we can. And it's important. I was glad to be able to connect Katie with Rabbi Rosen, and just everybody. This is definitely where we need to be building coalition, especially amongst the tribe. It's very important that we do that. That's what I say. So Thursday, Self-Loathing Tribe Fest. What else? Oh, Friday, anybody who's local, we're going to be at Dania Beach, Trunk or Treat, Friday night from, I think it's 6 to 9. I think it's 6 to 9. And it's at that park. Is it Frost Park? It's the main park in Dania Beach where everything happens. And we will be there giving out candy. And I'll be wearing some sort of costume. I don't know what.
I am not growing out a full beard. That is not happening.
He's doing this for a Halloween costume for which nobody will know. Guys, he's wanting to dress. He thinks because everyone tells him he looks like Steve Buscemi, he's going to dress like he's going to be Mr. Pink from Reservoir Dogs for Halloween. Now, let me again be very clear, guys. We are going to a Trunk or Treat family event in Dania Beach, where we're going to be handing out candy to kids and families dressed in costumes. And he's going to be dressed as Mr. Pink from Reservoir Dogs. So one, nobody's going to really know who that is, except for maybe a handful of parents.
You know what this is? It's the sound of the world's tiniest violin being played.
It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to know who you are. And it's kids. It's so unfun. It's such an unfun thing to do. If he were going to an adult party, I would, fine, whatever. It's going to be a family trunk or treat dressed as a character from Reservoir Dogs that nobody will recognize. That's what
Thank you, Metalopoly. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, it is a great movie. I don't dispute that. And I actually love Tarantino.
Ray,
big fan.
Ray, you're telling on yourself, dude. Somebody's got to watch you. I don't know what the hell you're up to. That's when somebody says that's what they want to do.
Although, truthfully, I would recognize it.
Yeah,
I would. And I love that movie, too.
That's a great movie.
Yeah. Look, my dream costume in life, and for any, is to be Maude from The Big Lebowski from the Gutter Balls dream sequence where she's in the gold Viking ensemble with the bowling ball like bra shirt on. Julianne Moore is Maude Lebowski is one of my all-time most favorite characters, like ever. So I've always wanted to be that, but the truth is it's a really hard costume to put together nicely, and I just can't do it easy. So I just haven't had it in me.
As you guys know, we are a demonetized channel for reasons that have never been fully explained.
But I could guess.
I think we can all guess, and especially now. I mean, listen, get it all out of your system now while we are demonetized, because Lord knows if this was happening while we would
have been demonetized.
Oh, totally.
We're never. I just feel like, and the more it's just the hill I'm going to die on.
If you are so inclined, please go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a wonderful, small but mighty supporter of our channel. It is obviously very appreciated. Entry gets you the Lulu sticker. For those of you who have not seen Jen's post from Instagram over the weekend on Saturday, Small Business Saturday, Jen is a very crafty individual.
I am crafty.
Who has the ability to make these nice
I do original collages. They're collages. I don't know why that is so difficult. And I also do necklaces with dried flowers and resin that I think are really pretty. But anyway, so we had a show on Saturday. It was kind of sad. I at least paid for my table. I'm doing another one on Sunday.
Ooh.
And I'm hoping that I think is a bigger thing. But I'm trying to unload inventory because I like to make things, but I cannot keep building up inventory.
Well, become a $10 a month patron and we'll see what we can do for you.
He wants me to start doing art as patron gifts, but the problem with that is art's personal, and I don't like the idea of sending something to somebody.
I think people would really appreciate that personally.
You know what? Art is a personal thing. I've had somebody, my mother-in-law, buy a big piece of expensive signed art for us that is so not my style, so not my taste. And I had to have it hanging in my house for so many years. And we still have it, but it's not hanging on the wall. We downsized, so I literally don't have the space for it. But honestly, I do not like the idea of you cannot pick out art for other people unless you know the person likes a particular thing.
Go to Jen's Wicked Gypsy Etsy page and check it out. And for the $25 a month or $25 donors, you get yourself the Jen Change.
Or we have t-shirts. You could have either.
You can have either or.
We have the short sleeve purple tees and purple and heather jerseys.
Heather purple.
They are heather purple. Well, the new ones that we have are not so much. They're not the heather.
A little bit. This is more.
I have not been able to find consistent t-shirts. I just can't. I've never been able to do this properly ever since the campaign. I cannot get it. If you do not
want to put your credit card on the grid, you could go over to Cash App, $Jen Change. Any amount that you can contribute is very much appreciated. The money that comes into this show is for volunteer efforts locally and to pay our what I would consider to be volunteers at this point, because that's essentially what this is. Because we're not getting any
We want to
money.
pay our producer. We want to pay the people so that they keep doing good work for us, guys.
Yeah, if you like the work that we're doing.
Scrimping.
Jasper, welcome to the channel. A little earlier in the
I don't count that as calling for reparations.
Yeah, it's his own way of calling for
it. Isn't reparations. What he said was, from the clip that I saw, which obviously was just a clip, so I don't know the entire context, but what he was talking about was investing in Black communities and a grant program to be able to like help build up previously ignored areas. That is nice and it's reparative in concept, but that is not reparations.
Lulu is a Caton de Toulier, a very special type of dog.
Yeah. She's a Caton de Toulier. She's very fancy. She's not here today because last time she was here, she was annoying and she was scratching at the door and wanting to go out. And I just don't have it in me to deal with that right now. She's old and cranky.
Thank you, Carney Verde. Yes, she is a great actor. And of course,
yes, but this is a family trick or treat kids event. Nobody's going to know who that is. Nobody's going to know.
Sorry, can't help
it's absurd. Nobody's going to know who that is.
We thank you all. This has been a very strong viewership this evening. We got at around 50 live viewers. So yeah, we're growing. We're getting there. We're not there yet. I think
we need a little help.
Yeah,
if you guys would just share.
Yeah, share.
Like everybody, if everybody who came on brought someone with them. That's what we do at Jewish Voice for Peace. Like everybody says at the next meeting, bring somebody with you. It's very, but like if everybody who came on brought somebody with them and then kept doing that, that would help immensely. We're never going to get recommended in the algorithm. We're never going to get promoted. You can put the bell on and you're still not going to get notified. We are suppressed.
We are.
And I'm not saying that in a paranoid,
but not depressed.
No, I'm not paranoid. It's just a fact. And I know this because I see shows that have less subscribers that get 10 times more live viewers on a live stream. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, we're demonetized. We are suppressed. There's a lot of things going on, but that's because our message is very true. If you're going to speak truth to power, understand that the people in power are going to come for you. Full stop. Like that's how it is. And the fact that Jen has challenged the power of a very notoriously powerful individual who has a really big grudge against her is going to.
And what's so funny is that do we really even know that? We suspect it. Like we've added a whole narrative to it because all these things kind of fall into place at certain times with her. But like she does a good job of pretending that she doesn't know we exist. It's kind of funny. It's like this game. She pretends that she doesn't know we exist, but then if I do something that she doesn't like, there's a repercussion that happens very closely thereafter.
The eye in the sky is always there.
It's bizarre.
Smash the like button, share, subscribe. Multi-Mind, Travers, Notary, Metalopoly, of course. Ray, you're coming on more consistently. I got to give you credit. It's good to see you in the chat. Chris Garrett, as always. Carne Verde, Brian St. Pierre.
Every time I say that, I keep thinking carne asada.
Carne asada.
And I don't even eat meat, but that's what I think.
Yeah, well, sometimes, but you still remember. Sable, always a pleasure. Travers, always with the comedy.
I do have a Clue medal. I love Reservoir Dogs. It's not for this type of event. Jeez,
DJ,
man.
Good to see you. To be real. Oh. To be real. Gotta throw back those 90s references.
I have to figure out what I want to be. I kind of think if I'm just going to wear, but I also think we need to be wearing, if we don't have volunteers that are wearing purple shirts, that sort of defeats the purpose because we're going there.
So then I'll go there and I'll wear the red purple shirt and I'll go and dress as Buscemi somewhere else.
Where else are you going?
I don't know. I'll figure something out. I have a life.
You just go walk around? Just go walk around as Mr. Pink?
Yes. Why do I got to be Mr. Pink? All right. So
I think I'm going to wear a purple tutu. I have a purple tutu.
And I'll just wear a purple shirt. Fair enough.
Well, I'm going to wear my purple shirt with a purple tutu.
That'll be interesting. And there will be photos and video for you all for the proof. So
if I ever get my jersey, I was thinking about being football princess. I've been that before. Dolphins? I make a very good football princess. Yes, but I still have not received a jersey, which is interesting. And now I should be getting 2.
Yes, Ray, we will definitely chat again soon. Thank you guys all for the wonderful support. It really means a lot. Don't forget, you can click the bell, sign up for Thursday, and we'll see you then.